I've got I got a lot of stuff to go over today. So y'all need to listen fast and I'll talk fast. Okay. Again, this is where I went to the Growth Day with Brendan Burchard live event, and I'm just going over some of my notes. And one of you on the call heard this yesterday, but you're about to hear it again. Here's looking at you from across the pond. But yeah, so let's just go ahead and get right into it. Okay, so we're gonna start today with Jamie Kern-Lima.
Cool.
Jamie Kern-Lima, as in person who sold It Cosmetics for 1.2 billion with a B. And if you didn't know, a billion is 1,000 million. So that's quite a lot of money. Okay, so she said, alignment is showing up as your authentic self. And then she said, the goal should be to grow through self-doubt, growing into your authentic self. Then she gave 5 questions for us to consider. Number 1, identify what you want. Most people don't have a clue what they want. And like I've said before, if you don't know what you want, you have to settle for what you get. So like to this day, like my birthday is in about 7 weeks. To this day, I still make a birthday list and a Christmas list every single time because I know what I want and I don't want somebody to tell me what I want. I know what I want. And I send links and there can be no misinterpretation of what I want. And my list even comes with rules. Exactly. And my list even comes with rules. Rule number 1, don't deviate from the list. And rule number 2, follow rule number 1. Okay, so those are my deals. Okay, so identify what you want. Number 2, why do you want it? Number 3, take massive action. Number 4, believe it's possible. And number 5, believe you are worthy of it. And then Les Brown, she didn't say this, this is what Les Brown said. You don't get in life what you want, you get in life what you are. So that's something to think about. Then she said, knowing when to let go of a dream is just as important as knowing when to go after a dream. As Zig Ziglar said, sometimes you got to make a decision if you're going to fish or cut bait. And if you're going to fish, you need to fish. And if you're going to cut bait, then you need to cut bait. The only problem with cutting bait is if you cut bait, you can't fish anymore because you just cut your bait. Okay. But with that cutting your bait, you also have to be aware of the sunk cost, your blood, sweat, tears, effort. It may be not turn out what you want it to, and you got to be okay with that. Okay. Then she said she got denied before she sold her company. She got denied over 200 times for people to invest in It Cosmetics. And then she said whenever she first started getting a few just openings to be able to go talk to someone to see if they would be interested in buying some of it, she said, believe you belong in the room. And then the whole time she was thinking, whenever she came out with this idea, was she kept telling herself, this is going to be huge. This is going to be huge. It's going to be massive. Okay. So that's a pretty good mindset, because if you're like, no, this is going to be biblically big, then it's like, okay, well, if you have a bad day or somebody tells you no, it's like, well, they just don't get it because this is going to be massive. Okay. Then, just like when I did this yesterday, I'm the only boy here. So for the girls in attendance, she said 3 or 4 times, maybe 5, know your why, then fly, girl, fly. Know your why and fly, girl, fly. Okay. Then she said, trust your knowing, like knowing in your head and your heart, not the no. And then she said, self-doubt kills more dreams than anything else. Self-doubt. And then she said, the most common no's are what you tell yourself. Because if you say, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not whatever enough, that means that you don't really believe that you belong there, you know. And like what Les Brown said when he first started speaking, somebody said, you know, who qualified you to be up here? And he said, I qualified myself simply by raising my hand. Like I qualified myself. Okay. Then she said, turn down the volume on self-doubt and turn up the volume on belief and your knowing. And she said, when those get flipped and you turn down the volume on belief and up the volume on self-doubt, she said, that's where you start living your life hiding in plain sight. So then she kind of slowed everything down and got us to contemplate some things kind of in about, you know, 10 or 15 minutes. She said, allowing social media to be a distraction and not making connections a priority. You know, that's kind of how you die on the vine, kind of. Now, obviously, social media is there to keep you on the app as long as humanly possible, because that's how they make money. Okay, it's a business. But there's a difference in creating content and then getting out and mindlessly scrolling for hour after hour after hour and not just consuming and not creating. Okay, there's a difference between that. Then she said, whenever you think you're a lone wolf, that's a deep-seated belief that you aren't worthy of others helping you. Then she asked, what's the way you've been hiding in plain sight? What's the way you've been hiding in plain sight? What's it costing you? And then what will that cost you in 5 years? And then she said, imagine your life 10 years from now. What will that, whatever that is, cost you then? Then imagine life in 20 years. What will it cost you then? Then she said, what's the smallest step you can take today? Not tomorrow, not 3 weeks from now, today. Because you can do the smallest step today. You might not have it where it's fully functioning, but you can do something towards it today. She said, when we get out of our head and into our soul, emotions come, and it's you, and intuition comes. Then she said, you cannot fake authenticity. It can't be done. And Zig Ziglar said, you can't consistently perform in a manner which is inconsistent with the way you see yourself. So take that for what it's worth. Then she said, being authentic doesn't guarantee success. Being inauthentic guarantees no success. And then she said a line I really liked: when people believe in you, prove them right. And then she said, get really good at cheering yourself on. Because sometimes you feel you're not alone, but you feel lonely, even though you're not alone, because, you know, maybe you don't have a kind of a team around you, or kind of a solopreneur, and sometimes you got to pep yourself up and give yourself a pep talk. Then she said something that struck a chord with me. By the way, her book is called Believe It. That's the name of her book. I haven't read it, but I mean, I'm sure it's pretty good. I think she posted a picture of it. It's got like a blue cover or something. I think like a blue, like my shirt. Yeah, I think I could be wrong, but it's called Believe It. I mean, how many Jamie Kernlinas can there be? Okay, I think she has one book, so Google it, people. Okay, so then she said, what is your relationship with rejection? And then she said, when you change this, it's a game changer. Because then she said, asked us to write down what we thought of when someone told us no or we got rejected. So, I wrote stuff down. I can't speak for anyone else. I wrote a few things down. And then she kind of hit us like with a mic drop moment. She said, that is your current definition of rejection. One of the things I put down is I'm not enough, which is what we already talked about earlier, And then she said, when you figure this out, you can switch the rejection from what you think it is to maybe one of these frames. It changes your whole mindset. So instead of saying whatever you're thinking or whatever you wrote down for your current definition of direct rejection, whenever I said, what's it like whenever someone rejects you, you can intercept with what you wrote down with something like this. She said, rejection is God's protection. She said, everything happens for us and not to us, which is true. And then she said, desperation causes you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. Because I mean, hey, if you're in a pinch and you've got to have some money to eat, literally to survive. There's no links to what you would do because you need something to eat, Okay, another way she said it is, God hides your value from them because they aren't assigned to your destiny, which I liked that. And then I'm one of the brave ones willing to go for it. So just because they told you no doesn't mean that you're a failure or you're whatever. Zig Ziglar said, failure is an event, it's not a person. So just because you failed on a test or you didn't do whatever doesn't mean you're a failure in life and you're a total loser. That just means in that particular event, you didn't have a passing grade. So that's, maybe you should have studied harder or asked for help or whatever. Okay. And then I wrote down, rejection says more about them than me. Because then, Steve Chandler, he says, no stands for next one. Because there's always somebody you can help. She said, then she reiterated, here you're knowing, like knowing in your head and your heart more than a no, and make a decision. Then she said, another mic drop moment, self-doubt comes in when it's all about you. So find somebody to help. Okay. Now that went way faster than it did yesterday. Way faster, because that was only 13 minutes. Okay. So any questions? Janine, do you have any questions?
No, but I really like those quotes. I'm going to type them up because I think they're really powerful. Like when I'm having those doubtful moments, which I get a lot, to kind of read, they really, really do empower you. So I really like them.
The reframes, is that what you're talking about?
Like all the quotes that she said, all the trust your knowing, not your nose.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the self-doubt one, and yeah, all of those, and the rejection ones. That's so true. That's so true, because I know if I get rejected, it can make me sink, maybe for a week, maybe, so it's kind of, that is really, really, really helpful for me.
Yeah, it was like, with she went for, so I don't know if I even told you this. There was other speakers besides Brendan Burchard, and whenever she got done, Brendan was there, obviously, and he came out and he kind of like introduced everybody, and then he kind of had a little not a piggyback, but just like a carry on to what they were saying. And he said, I've been doing this. He said, he said, pre-COVID, I did, he said 8 4-day events a year for, I think he said 15 or 16 years straight.
Oh,
okay. So that is a lot of time.
Mm.
And he said that when Jamie got, I guess, backstage or whatever that morning, he said she asked for something that no one's ever asked for in 15 or 16 years, doing 8 events a year. And she walked in and she said, can I go for 4 hours?
Wow.
And he was like, oh, I like that. That's aggressive. Like I'm a fan of that. He said, I appreciate the ask. Because what's what I can tell you? I tell you no.
Mm.
He said, in this case, I got to tell you no, because we have other speakers lined up and I've got kind of an agenda. But she ended up getting 45 more minutes than she was supposed to get. She was supposed to get about an hour 15, and she went 2 hours straight.
Wow. God.
And I feel that she was just getting warmed up. She could have easily gone another hour, no problem. So I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
I forgot I need to scoot right back there to get my paper towel, because we're probably gonna get some more. I'm gonna need to write in a minute. So hold on. But so I took that to be ask. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Tell you no. You already got to know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I talked about this yesterday with somebody. If you don't ask, I'm not going to say that anything's impossible unless it defies the laws of physics and gravity, but pending that's not the case. If you don't ask, I'm not going to say you have a 0% chance. I will say you have a 0.01% chance, because they could just find you. But if you ask, at worst, you're going to have a coin flip chance. So that goes from 0.01 to 50%, which, if it's something you kind of want, I'll take 50% odds other than 0.01% chance.
Yeah.
But that door to get that to swing is asking. Okay. So now we're going to switch to a guy named Anthony Trucks, who I'd never heard of before. He was a former NFL football player, and he played at the University of Oregon, the Oregon Ducks. He played football there, and then he went on to the NFL. And he said, the very first thing he said, this guy, everybody that walked on the stage, Brendan Burchard's not super yoked up, but he's trim, he's in shape. It's not like he's, a blob, but everybody else they rolled out there is like, could be on a cover of a magazine, I was like, good grief, they got just the heavy hitters just rolling out here, And the very first thing he said was, my mindset when I wake up every day is, I'm awesome and I own it. But he said, not in an arrogant way, like you're, just below the creator. But he said, whenever you have that, you have a kind of different level of confidence. So I thought that was good. Then the point of his talk was the dark work meaning basically what you do when the lights aren't on. Because that's going to show how you perform when the lights come on. You know, like we're talking about practice, you know. He said in the dark work, when you're doing the work when the lights aren't on and no one knows you're grinding away and honing your craft, he says, focus on being selfish and selfless, both. But then he said, what promise did God ask when he created you? Well, that was good. Then he said, you can't have a goal that's outside your current identity. You can't have a goal that's outside your current identity, which basically I took that to mean similar to what Jamie Kern Lima said. You've got to believe that you belong. You know, so when something happens, you know, it's like, well, of course, I set myself up for this to happen. So I'm expecting it to happen, you know. Then he didn't say this, but what I thought of was he said the dominator's identity. That's what he kind of called it. Like, think like I'll use sports because it's an easy analogy. You know, Kobe Bryant, before he passed, you know, when he was playing, he kind of became known as the Black Mamba. That was his nickname. But you could just tell, like LeBron to some extent, Michael Jordan. I don't really pay attention that close to basketball, but I know who these people are. Obviously, I know who Michael Jordan is and Kobe Bryant is. That's when I kind of watch basketball. But anyways, whenever the lights were on, or before the lights were on, Kobe was known for like the dark work. He said one of the guys came in one time as a rookie, and he said, "I'm going to impress the team, and I'm going to get to the gym at 5, and you know, practice didn't start till like 8. So he goes, I'm going to impress them, and you know, I'm going to get there first, and you know, make my name." He said, the first I get there at 5, he said Kobe had already been there for an hour. 4 a.m. He'd already been there for an hour. So the next day, he didn't know he'd been there for an hour. The next day he got there at 4:30. Kobe was there. The next day he got there at 4 and Kobe was there before him. So, but that's how you become an all-time great. You got to put the work in, you know, and what Kobe kind of became known for was called the Mamba mentality. Like whenever he stepped in that arena and it was on the court and it was game time, he was a killer, an absolute killer.
Wow.
But whenever he got off, I mean, he spoke several languages. I mean, he was a you know, best I could tell, a very good father and, you know, a husband and all this other stuff. But whenever he did the work and whenever the lights came on, like playtime's over, like it's time to get down to business, you know. But then he said something, I think this is called an acrostic. Ego. Okay. He said, everyone's greatest obstacle. Ego. Everyone's greatest obstacle.
Yeah.
Because whenever that happens and your ego gets too big, you get a little bit too big for your britches, and you think that you're, you know, you were put here to do whatever it is, and I'm the best that's ever been, and I'm the best that's ever done it, you know, which could possibly be a problem, because almost certainly somewhere in the world there's someone better at it than you are. Almost certainly, you know. He says, if I do it and no one sees it, was it worth it? Because, you know, we've all heard the stories of people that are quote overnight successes that have been toiling, doing the dark work for 2 decades, and all of a sudden, they're global.
Yeah.
But it's they wouldn't have gone global without the dark work where nobody saw it, where nobody had an audience.
Absolutely.
And it's like, everyone starts at the same place. Everyone starts at 0, but it's the consistency over time where all of a sudden now you're a global superstar or you're a known field. But I've got probably between Facebook and Twitter, which I hardly ever get on anymore. I've probably got, I don't know, say 4,000 friends, give or take. But there's 8 billion people on Earth, most of which don't even speak English. And that's about the only language I know. I can speak a little Spanish, but I can't speak enough to be able to communicate. But okay, so 4,000 people. Okay, but I don't know 4,000 people. They're just my friends on social media. They're not like my ride or dies where I'm going to call them and say, I'm in a pinch. Let me call one of my people on Facebook I don't even know. Let me just message them and see if they'll answer. That's not it. But that dark hours work, that's where it begins to pick up serious traction, when you're doing the work where no one's paying attention. Because ultimately, everyone is paying attention. Because like somebody yesterday said, yeah, I see you all over social media. I haven't been on social media hardly ever in the last 2 weeks. I get in, I do my thing, and I get out.
Yeah.
Now, have I spent a few minutes scrolling? Yeah, I have. Guilty. Okay. But I'm not spending hours there. Okay. And he says, if nothing is there to drive you, it won't last. Because motivation will run out. Think of like your car. As soon as you fill your car up, or petrol for our friends across the pond, put your petrol in your car or gasoline. At that moment, you're topped off. But as soon as you start the key and you start driving off, that tank starts to empty. It's not just where it stays filled up forever. I wish it did, but that's not the way it works, And he said, commit to doing things that aren't normal for you. Because that's how you stretch. Because once you get used to doing things that aren't normal for you, they become the new normal, and then you stretch a little bit further.
Like a morning routine.
Yeah, how about that? Strange concept, right? But the thing about that morning routine is you don't commit for a year, you commit to tomorrow. But if you continue to do it and then commit to the next day, it'll be 50 years of your life, and you're never going to miss a day because you're only committed to doing it one day. Yeah. And then he said, I've done too much work in the dark to lose in the light. Which I thought was really good. Okay. Then he said, there's 2 kinds of kind of dark work. There's one that's quasi dark work called shadow work, and there's one called the actual dark work. The shadow work is kind of when you're figuring it all out and what you want to do. You're a little stab here, a little stab there, a little nibble there, a little nibble there, because you're kind of like, I'm going this direction, but you don't know which exactly. You don't know north, south, east, west. Okay. But he said, once you get that figured out, then it switches from shadow work to the dark work. The dark work is what you do when you have whatever it is, figured out. So like the shadow work is when you're stabbing, you're seeing what's going to stick. or what you're into, or what your interests are. And is this possible? Then once you get that figured out, then that's where the dark work comes in. Then he said something like Anthony Truck shouldn't be alive. There's no question. He said whenever he grew up in the foster care system, and he said 75% of inmates are from the foster care system. You know what foster care is over there, Janine? Okay, I didn't know. I didn't know. I'm sure y'all had. I didn't know what it was called over there. He said one of them. I think he said. I think he said when he was like 2 years old, like old enough to speak, but I mean 2, not fluently, obviously. I think he said the whatever foster care place he got in, he said if he back talked at all, he got punched right in the teeth at 2 years old. Okay. Then he said, he might have said, don't quote me on that, but I know for sure he said what I'm about to say next, 100% certain. He said one of the foster care kids he was at, parents when he was like 4 or 5, maybe 6, he said, put him in a shopping cart, like in a buggy, and pushed him down a hill into oncoming traffic.
Wow.
So he said, then he said a funny picture. He's not super tall, but he looks like he's about maybe 6'2". So he's a pretty good sized guy. And he's a tall, muscular black guy. And he showed the picture of his family that eventually, I think, adopted him. And there's this a white mom and a white dad, and they have like 4 kids. They look like missionaries, basically. And then he's in their picture, and he said, "Here's my family." And he said, "I'm the one on the top right, by the way," because they were all white people, and he was a black guy, and everybody was dying. I thought it was hilarious. But he's like, "Yeah, if you can't tell, I'm in the top right of the picture, and it was funny." But he said the dark work experience, he said, is only for me. He said it's not for anybody else except for me, And then he said he gave a couple points. He said respect the shine, or respect the goal, or have admiration for the target, And then he said, what is it? Similar like what Jamie Kern-Lima said, what are you going after? Because how will you know if you're going, what you're going after? How will you know where you get it if you don't know what you're going after in the first place? And then he said, champions aren't surprised when they win, because they expect to win, and they're shocked when they don't, because it's like I'm putting more work in than anybody, And then this wasn't Anthony Trucks. This is back when Ed Milet said he showed a video of Tiger Woods when Tiger first came out to the PGA Tour, I think in '96. He played at the Greater Milwaukee Open or something. And a very good player in his own right named Curtis Strange was interviewing Tiger Woods. Now, mind you, Tiger Woods was probably 20 or so, 21 maybe, because he went to Stanford for a couple of years. So he wasn't like he was 16, but he was, he was, say, 20 years old, 19 or 20. Okay. And Ed Milet showed this video, and I had just seen this video 2 days before I went to the conference. That was the first time I'd ever seen it. And Curtis Strange, he won a couple majors. He was a good player. No one would say he's in the discussion of the greatest players ever by any stretch of the imagination, but he was a very, very, very solid player. And Curtis Strange was interviewing Tiger Woods, and he said, what's your intention for the week? Because he had a lot of hype and stuff. And Tiger Woods said, I'm here to win. And the point was, Curtis Strange could have said, like not enabled him, but like encouraged him, like, hey, you're here, you've got your tour card, you can win. Everybody in the field can win. But Curtis Strange didn't say that. Curtis Strange said, win. And Tiger goes, yeah, but why would I be showing up to the tournament if I don't think I can win?
Mm-hmm.
And Curtis Strange said, you'll learn. And then Tiger ended up winning. Like that one, he won. And he's in the discussion of the top 2 golfers ever. It's either him or Jack Nicklaus, and I'm okay with either one you pick. I personally pick Jack Nicklaus because he has more majors, but Tiger is still in the top 2 of all time, and they've been playing golf for a long time. Mm-hmm. So if you can be in the top 2 ever, you're doing something pretty good, you know. But that's that mindset he had. He went in expecting to win, not like, oh, well, you know, we'll see what happens. You know, he was like, no, if I'm here teeing the ball up, I'm planning to win. Mm-hmm. And the thing about Tiger and like Kobe were kind of similar, where once Tiger got the lead, warm up the bus, thing was over. Y'all are playing for second, because he was going to keep his foot on the pedal, you know. But that's a champion's mindset that you don't develop by just showing up. You've got to put the work in, because they said in Tiger's heyday, he hit more balls than anybody on this earth. So he did all the work in the dark hours, you know, where no one else was watching. When it was come Thursday morning, it was time to tee it up. It's like, yeah, y'all are playing for second. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm here to dominate, you know? Then he said, so back to Anthony, he said, of the goal, admiration, vision, he said, what is the gravity of it? He said, if it's all about you and it's a solo mission, he said, it's not a big enough dream. Because you gotta have other people to really make it scale. And then he said, who has it? Find someone who already has what you're looking for. And he said, find out what they do and then do that. You know, because here's the model. You want this? I did this. Some people aren't like, I heard it said one time like this, sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Because like what it's going to take to get whatever that thing is, you're not willing to go through that link to make that happen. Mm-hmm. You know, then he said, what will it take? You know, assess the situation. Like, kind of, okay, I need this. Then he said, it's hard to see the label from inside the jar, because you might need outside perspective, you know, like whether a coach or a pastor or someone who's not physically involved in the deal. Okay. Then he says, do the dark work. It has to be done. This is not negotiable. He said, you do the work without anyone noticing or watching. But then he said something I thought was key. He said, those who matter know what it takes. You know, the ones that are saying, why are you doing all this? You know, it's useless. Those people don't get it. They haven't been there and got the t-shirt, you know. But the people that are cheering you on, they know that you don't just roll the ball up there and all of a sudden stuff starts happening. You got to put the work in. Mm-hmm. Then he said, design your dark. He said, write it down. Very first thing, write it down. Write down whatever it is you want. I heard somebody, another Ziegler coach one time said, it's on vapor, it's vapor if it's not on paper. And then he said, be disciplined to follow a plan. And he said, make a declaration. Write it and speak it, because, you know, our words have power. He said, if you're struggling with a declaration, he said, go over in your mind the last 30 to 60 days of what you accomplished and write it all down. Then he said, emerge. You don't want to be alone because you don't like who you are, who you're alone with. You don't want to be alone because you don't like who you're alone with. Meaning sometimes we don't like ourselves. And we're our own worst enemies, you know? And he says, draw on your darkness. Remember, because whenever you think no one's watching, well, you know the work you've put in, and then you can draw on that when the lights get heavy and it's, you know, getting towards the end of the game. Like, I've made this shot 50,000 times this week. Like, what's the big deal? It's just another shot, you know? Then he said, if you want something more, you can't spend another day where you currently are. You got to go. And then he said, people can't lift you up if you don't lift yourself up. So he said, he kind of asked some questions to us. He said, like, what's your two big ahas from what I've said? And, you know, write those down. Then he said, write down 2 things that are going to change. And then he said, write down 2 goals you're going to go get and why. Like, why are you going to go get whatever those are? And he said, what's going to change and what you're going to go get. He said, that is the dark work. You know, that's the whole point of his talk. But then he said something interesting. He said, there's an entrepreneurial journey we all go through. He said, for the first year or 2, say first 2 years, he said, you're trying to figure it all out. You don't know exactly what your product's going to be or what it's going to look like or whatever, okay, or how you're going to serve people, okay. He said years 3 and 4 is when you're starting to see the momentum and it's starting to, like, hey, this is going to happen, you know, like Jamie Kern-Lima said, this is going to be huge, you know. Now you got to start thinking that day 1. You can't wait till year 4 for it going to be huge to kind of pick up. But then he said years 5 and 6, he said, streamline and go. Basically, like year 5 and 6, it's time to put some gasoline on this fire and let's get this thing to blow up. But he said, like, that dark work where no one's really paying attention, that's like the first year or 2, because you're not a known person, because there's 8 billion people on the planet. So I mean, even if you had 1 million people on your email list, how much is that compared to 8 billion? I mean, it's not a drop in the bucket. It's a big number, but not compared to 8 billion. It's nothing. It's like a drop of water in the ocean. You don't even notice it. But that first year or 2, that dark work where you're getting your mindset, you're getting your habits, you're getting your practices, you're getting your routines. That's whenever it starts picking up, you're okay with yourself. Because sometimes too much fame and too much success too quickly could cause you to actually go down. You know, this just came to me just now. Years ago, Jenny, y'all got Discovery Channel over there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So years ago, like in the 2000s, early 2000s and like late 90s and early 2000s, they had motorcycle shows. Like they would build custom motorcycles, and that, like, Orange County Choppers and American Chopper, and they had biker build-offs where a guy from California and a guy from Florida would meet. They'd each build a bike in 30 days, and they would meet in St. Louis or whatever, and then drive to a motorcycle rally, and they would vote on whoever person they like the most. Okay. Most of those people, if not all, but let's say there was, say there were 20 bike builders that were on this series. That was like a TV show. Almost all of them now aren't even in the game anymore because they got so big so fast that they didn't have the systems and structure and the right with themselves, and they couldn't handle it. Like, there's a couple I know that are still in the game. You know, Rick Fairless at Struckers Dallas up in Dallas. He's still in. But he didn't rush out whenever he got all this money from all the fame. He didn't rush out and go make a 20,000 square foot shop. He still got the same shop he's got. He just kind of added on to it a little bit because you can add on much cheaper than you can just start over and just put a whole new warehouse out. But a lot of those people, they got a little notoriety and fame and they weren't ready for it. And they went and got, oh yeah, this will keep going. Well, it was a bubble. Like it wasn't sustainable because people were buying. One of the guys said, he said, I've got 2 basically identical choppers in my shop. He said, whenever that show was going on, he said, I couldn't even give away one that was under 60 grand. But he said, if I had basically the exact same bike with a different paint job, same price for me, and I put one with 55,000 and one with 100,000, he goes, I just sold the 100,000 one by sundown, and the 55,000, which is the exact same bike, would have just sat there. But some of those people, they weren't ready for it because they put like there. A lot of those guys, either aren't in the business anymore because they I guess they didn't realize that if you go buy a, you have got a 2,000 square foot warehouse or shop and you go buy a 20,000, build a 20,000 square foot warehouse. Well, you still got to pay the bill on the 20,000. If the money's not coming in, they're kind of like, they were kind of betting on the come, you know what I'm saying? Like it's coming in. Well, eventually it's going to not come in. I mean, it's, motorcycles aren't like where, you need toothpaste or you need food, it's a luxury item. It's not a necessity, but most of those guys weren't ready, and now one of them died. So okay, that's the way it goes. But there's only probably, I haven't looked at all of them recently, but the last time I looked, which has been a couple years ago, I think there were 5 that are still kind of in the game. But I think that dark work was, I like I said, I'd never heard of Anthony Trucks, but his talk was super good, and how he ended it was pretty cool. At University of Oregon, they're the Ducks. Their colors are green and yellow, and one of the alum from Oregon is Phil Knight, who owns Nike. Like he started Nike. He's one of their alums. Okay. So he went to Oregon and then he went and got his master's or whatever at Stanford. Well, they're both in the Pac-12, the football conference or the sports conference in college. So whenever Oregon and Stanford play each other every year, because they're both in the same division of the same conference. And for several years, Nike sponsors Oregon, of course, because that's his alum, and they also sponsor Stanford. Nike does. And he had a custom half Stanford, half Oregon jersey, because he's like, I went to both schools and I like both schools, but so I want a half jersey. It's like those stupid half and half scarves, like the football, the soccer clubs wear. It's dumb. But anyways, Oregon's known for, I think they have, with their pants and their helmets and their shirts, I think they have like 950 uniform combinations that they could put on. Wow. Just because every year Nike gives them whatever they want. Their alum is the owner of the company, you know. And how he ended his talk was their stadium is called like Auction Stadium or something like that. And it's not a huge stadium, but from what I've been told, it gets pretty loud for not having 100,000 people in there. There's like 60 or 70,000 in there. And how they start the game is their Oregon Duck mascot rides on the back of a guy's Harley. And he fires up that Harley in the tunnel, which if you've never been in a Harley in a tunnel, it is loud. Okay. And he's like, he's just giving it the beans, you know, he's revving the thing up. Well, then him and the mascot dart out of the tunnel onto the grass, and then the players run out behind him just as fast as they can run. And he had like a video of someone like with like a GoPro or something running out of the tunnel during a game with 65,000 people in there. And he played that video, and then he played the same music they came out to at the stadium. He played it in the speakers of the arena. And so like after he got done with that, there was 2,000 people roughly at GrowthDay. I was about to run headfirst right through a wall. Like I was like invincible, you know, but everybody was feeling that. It was like super hyped up. And then he just kind of walked off the stage. That was how he ended his talk. So yeah, so there we go. So next week, I got a little bit more from Brendan Burchard. Same time, 2:00 Central. Same time. Tell all your friends. Then there's another guy I'm going to talk about next week who I'd never heard of before I was there. His name was Trent Shelton. He's also a former NFL football player. I mean, it's like athlete, superstar, rock star. I mean, they were just lining them up. Okay. So I've got some good stuff from him. One of which is that you can't be elite with average work ethic. That was from Trent Shelton. That's where I got that from. I stole it from him. Okay. And then I've got a little bit more from Brendan Burchard. I'm going to try to get through all that tomorrow, next week. It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can get through 6 pages. No problem. But next week, one thing for sure we'll talk about is the D word, distraction. Here's a little nugget that we'll talk about next week too, in case y'all can't make it. Would you be interested in gaining 48 work days a year? 48. One hour a day that you find from not being distracted on email or social media or whatever. 1 hour a day over the course of the year is 48 8-hour work days. About 1 hour a day. But most people, especially in this country, and probably in the UK too, we don't average an hour a day of distractions. We average 4 hours a day with distractions. So that's whatever 48 work days times 4 is on average, which means some people are doing 6 or 8 hours a day and some people are doing none or very little doing none, but say 20 minutes a day. But that's 48 work days is, let's see, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. That's only, what, 20 hours? 20 days. So 48 days, that's relatively close to 2 months. Relatively close. It's closer it is 2 months than it is 1 month. So just by an hour a day of being less distracted, you pick up 48 work days on everyone else. And if you think about that, what if you think about that over a decade? That's 480 extra work days, which is quite a lot. If we're comparing apples to apples, So this good today? I learned some stuff.
Yeah, very good.
Awesome. Okay, so for all you people that are going to watch on Facebook or whatever later, I've got going to watch on Facebook or whatever later. Hold on. I got a book club that I started, and it officially started today. Woohoo! Today, June 1st. Okay. So some of you are in, and some of you have said you're going to join, but not for the first one because you're trying to get other stuff going on. And for the people that are on Facebook that are watching this, I don't know if you're in or not. For most of you, you're not. But we're starting today. You've got plenty of time, but we've got a very important book we're reading first. This book, The Ultimate Coach by Amy Hardison, aka the Book of Being, because you got to be before you can do and do before you can have, to quote Zig Ziglar. Okay. All the info is on that link I just put in the Zoom chat and on Facebook. There's plenty of time to join us, but it's a 450-page book. So you can't read that book in 2 nights, more than likely. So if you're interested in that, I'd love to have you join. And it's going to be a great time to be had by all. So that's about it for the day. I will be here next Thursday, same bat time, same bat channel, 2 p.m. Central. But in 2 weeks, I am not going to be here because I'm going to a little place I like to call the Costa Rica. So I will be basically doing as little as possible for about 6 days. So I will not be having this in 2 weeks, but I'll have it next week. So any other questions?
No, thank you. That's really, really useful.
Awesome.
Good.
Okay. We will
Hey,
we'll see y'all later.
Yeah. Thank you, David.
All right. Bye. Awesome.
thank you. Bye.